So, welcome back to the second part of my guide, which is going to be on the Mod 2.
Can you read the black Ford there for me?
Yep, so it's LT55CTK.
That'll do. Right, so when we come out to your bike, how would you check the engine oil level?
So you'd look at this area here. You'd want to make sure the bike is propped up straight, and you check the oil is in between the minimum and the max marks.
Okay. And just show me how you'd check the horn.
The horn. You don't want me to turn it on, do you?
Yeah, if you need.
Okay, so you just turn it on, and you simply just.
Okay. Carrying a pillion, a passenger, how will that affect your riding?
So you have to make sure that you take into consideration the braking distance. So it'll affect how it'll affect you taking longer to brake. It'll affect your balance as well. Cornering, you want to take it slower as well.
Yeah, that's fine. Sit on the bike, start her up. I'll do radio check. If you can hear me okay, we'll be on our way.
Okay, perfect. Similar with the first part, which was the Mod 1, I am using live footage taken from my actual test. So it is current and updated as of 2017. Both of these were done in the Uxbridge Test Centre. If you haven't already seen my Mod 1 guide, there'll be a link in the description or somewhere on the screen, so you can go have a look at that. Also, again, with my similar to my Mod 1, I'm going to be just adding commentary throughout, just to provide any tips or add anything I noticed during my test, so it can help you out when it comes to yours. Also, as this is actually going to be quite a long video, almost 30 minutes riding, I thought it'd be a good idea just to go through some show me tell me questions that are specifically for the motorcycle test, as well as questions you can get asked about carrying a pillion, as you saw at the start of the video. So hopefully this should break up the whole video and won't be as boring to watch throughout. And by the end of it, hopefully you should learn something new or two, which will help you out when it comes to doing your test. With the Uxbridge Test Centre as an example, there is a horrible start where there's a set of traffic lights, and just before that a yellow box junction. I think a year or two back it was actually a lot worse, where there was a bit of space beyond the yellow box junction, so people taking their test sometimes get stuck in this yellow box junction and immediately fail before their test has already begun. So that just raises a point. Obviously beware of yellow box junctions, and whatever you do, always make sure you can actually see there's enough space before proceeding to the other side. On the side note, with my test, the examiner was actually in a car and not on a bike. The only reason for this was simply because there wasn't any bikes available. There's no other reason other than that why that happens. It doesn't affect the outcome or prospect of the test. I actually find it, if they're in a car, it potentially makes it easier because small things are not picked up as much. So don't be concerned if that happens to you. So just coming up at the lights here, the standard or safest position when you're stopped on the bike is to have your left foot on the ground and your right foot on the rear brakes. Your hand should also be on the front brake. In terms of the clutch, you can clutch in and be in first gear, ready to set off if you're not as confident in that, or ideally just have it in neutral. Also, when you're stopped, for example, at lights or in traffic, don't become too relaxed or complacent. Make sure you carry out to do your observations, for example, looking in both mirrors and looking ahead to just check your surroundings or seeing if the situation has changed. Just making clear to the examiner that you're aware and alert of your surroundings even when stopped. You don't have to be too excessive with this. I mean, in the video you can see me doing it a lot here, but there's no need to do it to that extent. Also, it's a good time to just run through your head the next immediate route that you're going to be taking. So after that ridiculously long intense wait at the light, we can now set off. Make sure you do your shoulder checks as you're going off, and here we're going to be going into a 20 zone. So here I've looked at my mirror, signalled, done a quick lifesaver, and gone into the road. So quite soon on, when the test starts, the examiner will ask you to pull over probably within 2 or 3 minutes. So make sure you anticipate for that, because it is usually at the start and again throughout. It could be 2 or 3 times, as you will see in this video. So he's just asked me to pull over wherever possible. He will obviously tell you in whatever circumstance if you don't have to worry about any dropped curbs or single yellows, for example. But the general rule is to pull over where it is safe. If you have to go ahead a bit, it's not a problem, and the examiner will usually tell you, for example, behind this car or that car. Okay, so you just basically obviously do your normal mirror, signal, shoulder check when pulling over, and when pulling out you do the exact same thing. It is fair to note in 20 zones your speed can creep up a bit, so really do make sure you keep to that, as it'll be quite clear to the examiner you're not at that low speeds if you're going quite a bit above. Here I'll be turning right, so make sure you're at position at 3 and you've signaled quite early on. So always after a turn where you've indicated, do look down or to check it's cancelled, or just press the button once or twice just to make sure. This is a very dangerous mistake, and if you do leave it on for too long and it causes you any serious danger, it will result in a foul. Okay, coming up to a zebra crossing here. As you can see, there is not enough space for me to safely stop ahead of it, so I'm just going to be behind. I just looked behind there to see if anyone's likely to cross over here as well. So as you will see in the video, it was a bit of an annoying timing. As soon as the car's cleared, there was this person that crossed last minute. But again, if you're unsure if they're going to go straight ahead or cross, always stop anyway until you're 100% clear, as if they do decide to cross and you proceed into the zebra crossing, that will result in a foul. So once I was sure that was cleared, I proceeded, and here stopping at a about 2 bikes length from the car. Make sure I know it's a bad habit with everyone, but make sure you're not too close to them. If you find this is a problem, just constantly just go out for a ride and try to make sure you get the distance right on this, because doing this too many times can cause those minors to tot up. Okay, here just making normal progress, doing my checks as normal. Make sure I've cancelled that indicator. When I'm pulling out to that lane, I am looking at my mirrors again, making sure I'm doing all my correct observations when I'm changing lane. So mirrors, signal and lifesaver. Here I'm making sure at this roundabout that I am in the correct positioning before I enter the lane. And I left that tiny bit too late there, but still not a problem. If you do miss it, just go around twice, as that will that'll be okay to the examiner. However, if you try and correct yourself to make the lane, for example, and it is a dangerous maneuver, then that will not go down well and probably will result in a fail. So here I've already looked ahead and can see these people are very likely to cross. Also, with the zebra crossing, it's a good time, it's a good example to note that with these ones where it has an island in the middle separating the two, you can actually go once the last person has stepped off that half of the zebra crossing and is now into the island. Okay, this is a fairly normal road you'd come across. Example where you'd be position 2, so central, and then when these parked cars come up, you'd obviously want to edge out and meet in the middle of the danger when cars opposite the road come. And when pulling out, you can either just use your mirrors or you can do your shoulder checks. With here turning into this road, I don't want to make the turn too quickly because of the car. I am in position 3. With this lorry coming up ahead, he did flash and give me way, but with other road users that do that, be 100% sure they are actually before you commit, because last thing you want to do is pull out and them having to harshly brake. Okay, doing my normal turns here, and again the examiner is going to ask me to pull over, so it's like, I think it happens about 3 times. Here, give yourself plenty of space. Also, it is quite a good time to note as well with this, if it's a steep camber on the road, make sure you don't slip as you're putting your foot down, which I almost did there, I remember. Okay, pulling away, obviously make sure you do the same and adequate observations. Turning to this tight corner here, so you'd want to be at around position 1, but quickly move over because of the parked vehicles on the road. And when there's no obvious dangers or any other obstructions, you're in position 1. Coming up turning left is position 2. Coming up turning left is position 1. Making progress if there is nothing to stop you, so don't unnecessarily hesitate if there's no other cars going past. For example here, just look once, look twice, and off you go. There's no reason to stop there. Okay, here again, staying in central position. Remember, don't ever be less than a door's width from parked vehicles. If there's another car coming opposite and you have to be less than that, just stop, and that'll be more than reasonable to do so. So here again, I've just been asked to pull over. It's a good example to show that the examiner, I remember, did say don't worry about parking on a single yellow. So they're usually very helpful in letting you know about if it's okay wherever you decide to pull over. So you don't have to worry about too much about causing an obstruction or stopping in the wrong place. Okay, pulling over again here. So we are now approaching a dual carriageway. again, just notice the speed limit changes, because if you do miss that, you can the repeater signs might not be as close as you need them to make sure you're doing the right speeds. Again, it helps if you're familiar with the area, so I'd always usually recommend going to a test center where you do know the area if you can. But with these days, with long booking times, especially in the summer, that's not always possible. So on this carriageway, dual carriageway, making speed, but obviously making sure you can making sure it's the right speed, not just hitting the speed. Keeping to the distance, again noticing the speed limit change here. Standard observations when setting off again. So if I'm not mistaken, this was the independent ride part after the last time he told me to pull over. Okay. Also, it'd be a very good opportunity here as well to make sure whatever you do in your test, as stupid as it sounds, do not end up going on the motorway. This part here, I was slightly confused because this whole road is part of the A40 if I'm not mistaken, but if you accidentally end up in the far right lane, you will actually end up on the motorway. So really on these situations, on these types of roads, make sure you are in the right lane. Okay, so as you can see, there was a national speed limit sign coming up there, so really try and make up speed, because a lot of these times when the national speed limit sign does come up, people do not make up the speed. Here also is a very good example. I almost, because I was kind of distracted with the fact that I thought I was on the motorway for a second, I almost completely undertook the lorry. So I just managed to pull back from it. So that's another point, is whatever in any circumstance, apart from obviously slow moving or still traffic, do not undertake other vehicles on the road. That's obviously not part of your test. That's you cannot do that just generally according to the highway code. So with the independent ride, you want to be making sure you're looking out for signs nice and early, to make sure you know what you're going, and to also make sure you position yourself in the correct lane. If you do happen to go on for example, at a roundabout, take the wrong exit, it's not a problem. Just don't make any dangerous corrections, or again go around twice if you need to. The examiner will also step in if there's any problems. So if everything's kept safe, you've got nothing to worry about. Here is also coming up is another interesting bit of the test that I found. So roundabout here is not too much of a problem. There's a bit of roadworks going on, so you do need to make sure your positioning is fine. And okay, I think it was here. Right, so yeah, there was basically signs saying the speed limit. So this was normally a 60 road, I believe, and there was signs saying max speed 30. So I was thinking, they're not the signs that that you're required to stick to by law, as they're not the ones put around in a red circle, which means you have to do it. So these 30 signs were just advisory. So even though they're advisory, they were set out by, say, the council or relevant authority, for example. So again, in these situations where you're unsure, you don't actually have to stick to any advisory speed limits. So the signs that are basically, for example, around the corner where it says max speed 25, anything that isn't in a red circle is an advisory speed limit, but it'll be no harm in sticking to those speed limits, for example. So it's neutral whether you decide to follow it or not, but it's something to point out, as it can throw you off under the pressure of your test. Also, again, with roadworks, just do everything you would normally and safely. For example, here where you can see on the roundabout coming off, where I'd normally come off on the first lane, obviously I can't, so you just adjust according to that. Also, in situations like this where it's just open road, do try and hit the speed limit if it is safe to do so. Obviously, don't do anything dangerous or you're not comfortable with. But again, going too slow can result in not making progress, which would basically be causing obstructions unnecessarily. But generally, in this area, in this whole test route, I found the roads to be really good. I think I did it around, it was late morning, so traffic wise it was ideal, not hitting rush hour. I know some people actually do prefer rush hour because it means they don't have to worry about, for example, speeding or going too slow. But I personally think the more cars you have on the road, the more chance of something going wrong, especially at roundabouts. And on the note of roundabouts, they are one thing to be really careful of, as they do actually they're one of the highest reasons of causing people to fail, not only on the Mod 2 on bike tests, but also on the driving test. So make sure you are fully alert as you're approaching one. Don't leave it too late in terms of looking to see if it is clear. And just generally all-rounded observations. Don't be hesitant to go if it is fully clear. But then again, don't take stupid risks. If you do cause another vehicle to brake because of that, it will result in a fail. So it's just looking out very carefully and trying to predict the other road users' movements. So if you do live in an area which has a lot of roundabouts, and the chances of that living in the UK isn't too low, shouldn't really have too much problems in terms of getting practice done with that. Just worth noting for people that are complete beginners, even though this does actually come up on the theory, I believe. If you are in an area and you're unsure what speed to do because you can't see any of the speed limit signs, this is very much likely to be because you're actually in a 30 zone. So the current law states that repeater signs for areas where the speed limit is 30. So the way you'd find this out is either through entering the zone. So obviously there would be a sign stating that the speed limit is now 30, and beyond this, if there is regular lampposts on the road, this is a way to confirm that it is a 30. So if there's regular lampposts and no other further signage regarding speed limit, you are in a 30. Or in another circumstance, it could be the fact that you have missed a repeater sign. So just carefully look out for the next one if you have. In the meantime, if you are still unaware, it's best to obviously drop your speed rather than start speeding because you don't know, or you think the speed limit is higher. Other than that, continue just to make normal progress. And obviously once the independent ride has finished, the examiner will provide you with normal instructions regarding the route to take, like normal. So in this scenario on this road, I'm just behind this bus, so I'm making sure I'm keeping a good distance behind it, just so it gives me a clearer view of the road ahead, as whatever larger vehicle there is in front, it obscures your vision more. Here I make a safe overtake, So just standard procedures as you would if you're changing lane, and quickly head back into my lane after I've done that. My road positioning here, due to the parked cars, is quite far out, so make sure you follow suit when there are parked cars on the road as you would normally. Here, turning in again, making sure you're in the correct positioning. As you're coming into the road, make sure you do not swan neck, as it could cause unnecessary danger. Here, as the bus passes, I'm making sure that I'm well out of the way. It was a bit closer than normally get comfortable with getting. Make sure you're at position 1 when that happens. Again, if it is very tight, just stop completely and let the other vehicle pass you. In road conditions where it can be a bit bumpy or there's potholes or anything, before moving out, make sure you do all necessary observations. But as you can see, on just normal country type roads like this, there really isn't anything that would throw you off, especially quiet times that are not close to rush hour traffic. But worth mentioning again, don't let this make you become complacent, and keep carrying on all your effective observations and carrying on to make sure that you have full concentration on the road and being alert at all times. With mini roundabouts like this, there is no need to indicate coming off if there's no space, but you can if you want to. And again, if it's clear, don't hesitate to make progress. So this is now on the way back to the test center. Again, making sure on these open roads to make the speed, especially if it's national speed limit, where it's most common that people tend to go a lot slower than they should. But here it's just a comfortable pace. Again, don't see the speed as a target, but rather something you should aim to be advisory. The weather during my test luckily was nice and clear and dry, which meant it didn't really affect anything I'd normally do. But if it is, for example, raining, just make sure you take into account the longer braking distances you'd experience. So make sure you act accordingly to that and reduce speeds where necessary. Around corners especially, make sure you go slower. And for the rest of it, the ride was more or less just a fun ride out. Again, here's another mini roundabout. Just indicate as you normally would, but if there isn't any space, you really don't have to indicate out. But make sure you don't forget to do all your normal observations here. Again, moving out, making sure you're on the correct positioning when you see parked cars on the road, and where there aren't any, mirror and move in. So coming up to the last section now, which unfortunately is going to be another long light. We have to wait. But so taking into all that advice I said at the start, make sure you don't just stare into space at these lights, even though they are ridiculously long, and you carry out doing all your observations, which can actually help if anything does change. For example, if a bike is creeped up next to you and does a stupid overtake, at least if you looked, you know they were there, and it'd make you react faster. And setting off again, especially at this point, make sure you don't lose concentration or become complacent. So heading back to the test center. The test, of course, does not actually finish until you get off your bike, so make sure you do everything as normal. So if you do manage to pass your mod 2, you'll be able to finally get your full motorcycle license, be it an A1 or A2 restricted or a full A unrestricted license. And if you don't pass, don't let it dishearten you. It can be very frustrating, but you do have 6 months, usually 6 months depending on when you did the test after your mod 1. I know it's annoying, especially during summer in some test centers with waiting times for getting it rebooked, but within that time you have you'll be able to practice on any points the examiner raised which cause you to fail. So the examiner after the test will break everything down for you, so you can focus on that, and after with your instructor if you have one. So that covers just about everything with the mod 2. Again, if you haven't already seen it, I do have a similar type video for the mod 1 test. I really hope this has helped you with your preparation, or if you're just curious to see what the UK motorbike test just involves, or if you're just getting into bikes. Of course, if you've got any questions or worries about the tests or anything else I can help you with, just drop a comment below and I'll do my best to answer it for you. Thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more guides and other bike related videos which will be coming out very soon.